Welcome back to the channel. This is Rural Full Curl Precision. So before we get into tonight's topic, like, subscribe, share, comment. Help us get to 150. Do it. Because at 150 subs, you know what happens? Giveaway time. So a hat, a shirt, and a box for holding ammo. So one of our rifle boxes, whether it's long action or short action, whatever, we'll give you exactly what you're going to be using. And same thing on the hats. You're going to just pick a color and we'll get them ordered. So anyway, do that. Do it now. Anyway, for tonight's subject, we're doing a little comparison on the 28 calibers. And 3 really good cartridges. One that really deserves a lot more attention than it gets. And it's a shame that it's not more popular because it's a really good cartridge. Actually, 2 of them, but one that's also very popular and one that's actually coming up rapidly in popularity. So, what are they? The 284 Winchester, the 280 Ackley Improved, and the 7 Rem Mag. Now, here's the thing. I like to do everything in fair comparison. One thing to keep in mind is the SAAMI spec for each of these cartridges is actually a little lower than what they're capable of handling. They're all capable of handling 65,000 PSI. This has been proven time and again, so that's what I'm setting it at. It's a 24-inch barrel, and we're using a 160 grain Nosler AccuBond. So it's a common bullet. They all shoot them. They all seat well. They're not too deep in any of these casings. And we're using a 24-inch barrel because it's one of the most common barrel lengths that you can get. And it works with everything. So what we're going to do is we'll look at the numbers, and then at the same time, we're going to put them into the ballistics calculator. And we'll have some fun with that. Let me turn the camera around. So, for the 284 Winchester, I was able to come up with 51 grains of N555. So it's a really good powder. And we're getting 2856 with that 160 grain bullet. That's actually a pretty solid number. Mid 2800s, that's no slouch. With just under 2,900 foot-pounds. 280 Ackley Improved, you got 57.2 grains of N555 with 2917 feet per second and 3023 foot-pounds. 7 Rem Mag, you have 68.5 grains of N565 with 3074 feet per second and 3357 foot-pounds. Okay, so here it is. This is the ballistics calculator, and we're going to put all this information in. So, bullet weight is 160. We're going to start with the lowest velocity. Nope. Oh, back. Muzzle velocity, that of 2865. And the BC, go back here a second. I need a 0.531. There we go. And that's a pretty good solid BC for hunting. So everything else is the same in terms of how I usually like to set this up. And we're going to go just out to 600 yards. And we'll hit that. So when we go over this, I do a 200-yard zero. I find it to be the best. And 100-yard increments gives us an idea. So with the 284 Winchester, with that BC, it's actually at 200 yards, you're at 2579 feet per second and 2363 foot-pounds. That's plenty adequate for elk and moose. 400 yards, you got 2310 and 1896 foot-pounds. Oh, and by the way, that's only 18.9 inches of drop and 8.4 inches of drift with a 10-mile-an-hour full value wind. And then here's where it gets really interesting. At 600 yards, you got 64.2 inches of drop 20.1 inches of drift. But look at that. You're still over 2,000 feet per second, and you got over 1,500 foot-pounds. And that's somewhere I like to be, is in that you want to have a minimum of 2,000 feet per second and 1,500 foot-pounds to have adequate expansion of that bullet. So if you're a really good shot and you have the right setup, a 284 Winchester with a 160 grain AccuBond is definitely a 600-yard gun on elk. So it's definitely a really good option. I think I'd love to be able to see it get put more into short actions. It deserves more attention than it gets. Okay, so that's that. And then if we go to the 280 Ackley Improved, so again, using the same bullet, but we're just changing the velocity, got 29.17. And so, yeah, with the same thing, you have, and we're going to skip straight down to the 600-yard mark. Well, actually, we won't. We'll go down to the 400-yard mark. We'll do 200, 400, and 600. So at 200 yards, you know, again, you got, instead of in the 2,500s, you got 26.28 feet per second, and you got 24.53. So you got a lot more speed and energy, with only 2 inches of drift instead of, like, I think it was like 2.4. 400 yards, you got 18.1 inches of drop instead of 18.4. So you're talking pretty close at 400 yards. And 8.1 inches of drift, 23.56. So you got higher velocity and higher energy. And at 600 yards, this is like a 3-inch difference in drop. So instead of 64, it's at 61.6. And 19.6 inches of drift. And you're over 2,100 feet per second and more. So it was 1,505 for the 284 Winchester. You're at 1,568. So both are doing pretty good options, and they're not that far off from each other. Now, where it's going to get a little different is where it opens up. So take that same bullet, and we change that to 30.74. And here you go. This is where you get a larger gap. So at 200 yards, you got a 0 there. So you got only 1.8 inches of drift. So it's a lot faster. So therefore, it's holding its resistance to drift is better. 27.74. So even more. And 27.37 as far as your foot-pounds. At 400 yards, you're at instead of 18.1, you're at 16.2 inches of drop and 7.6 inches of drift. So you're already considerably flatter and less drift, with 24.94 feet per second and 22.10 foot-pounds. And at 600 yards, you got 54.7 and 18 inches of drift. So you have the flattest trajectory of them all, with 22.31 feet per second and 17.67. So realistically, with the 7 rem mag, and I get it, obviously some guys are all focused on, you know, is this going to be efficient enough, this, that, and the third. And I'm going to say this, as Reloading Weatherby said, you got to pay to play. It's not that the 7 rem mag is somehow more efficient. It's not. But the fact is, there's no denying that it is considerably flatter, and it's going to be hitting harder than the 280 Ackley Improved and the 284 Winchester. However, I will say this. If you're not too worried about hunting out even to that range and you're sticking within 400 yards, I don't see why you wouldn't go with something like a 280 Ackley Improved or the 284 Winchester. Another good option in this range is going to be something like a 7mm 08. So there are good options. I think it's kind of cool to go with something that's a little bit different. At the same time, you know, there's also hard to beat the tried and true. And here's the fact. Let me turn. The reason why the 284 Winchester isn't as popular is because mainly it was put in lever action rifles. I'll say that again. The reason why it's not as popular as it should be is its main platform are lever action rifles. and Brownings in particular. Like there wasn't a whole bunch of companies that chambered in it, but I think it'd make a phenomenal bolt gun type, especially if you're trying to keep a short action and have something that's a little better than a 308 or something that's a little bit better than, and you don't want to go with something ultra expensive. So, the nice part about it is it won't be too expensive to load. I mean, there's your initial costs, and it would have to be a custom rifle, but besides that, it'd be a really good option. So is a 280 Ackley. But I'll say this, in the factory offerings for rifles, the 280 Ackley Improved is considerably more money. And same thing when it comes to factory offerings for ammunition. They are considerably more money. Here's where, as much as people want to talk about, they compare it and they're like, oh, it's only 100 feet per second difference. The thing is, that's not even entirely accurate. I believe for a fact that you can push the 7 rem mag with that weight bullet probably mid 3100s, if not closer to 3200. Yeah, there's always a good possibility that you can get a little higher velocities out of this. And the fact is, if you gave me the choice personally, as of this moment, would I take a 7 rem mag or a 280 Ackley Improved? I'm going to take the 7 rem mag. And I'll explain why. It's very simple. As much as I have love and admiration for the 280 Ackley, the biggest issue is its overall costs. I can find a sweet shooting 7 rem mag all day long for $1,200 and under. There's so many manufacturers that chamber in it, even now. So you can get something really sweet shooting like a Weatherby 307 or, a Bergara B14 Ridge or, Weatherby Vanguard or just a handful of good rifles. And you can find good ammunition for $40 to $50, which is like essentially about half the cost of your typical 280 Ackley ammunition. And again, if you're hand loading, is there really going to be a difference? No. It's like you can push to it, as far as overall costs, it is cheaper if you're hand loading. But the thing is, not everyone has this has a space or the opportunity to hand load. So it's trying to take into consideration those things. So I'm going to say this. As far as overall availability for rifles and ammunition and overall cost of usage, between these three, you're going to have a hard time passing on the 7 rem mag. You can load it down a little bit and you can hunt medium game like pronghorn, whitetail, mule deer. And you can also load it up and you can go after your elk and moose and even bison. So yeah, it's a good cartridge. It's very versatile. Is the 280 Ackley a really good cartridge? Yes. Does it deserve the credit that it gets? Yes. Is it as viable as far as in real life as the 7 rem mag? No. And it has nothing to do with its performance. It has everything to do with the availabilities and the cost of getting into it. So that's all I have for tonight. Please like, subscribe, share, comment. Again, get people liking and subscribing so we can do a giveaway if you like free stuff. I know I do. Come on. Do it.